So we're thrilled to be here, and we are actually married, so that's really cool. Thank you for having us. Matt's going to be reading some stuff from his book, 1,000 Doors, and also some new stuff. And I'm going to be doing some of my newer stuff, as well as some pieces from my one-woman show, Anatomy of a Doll. So we're going to go back and forth. Our pieces are going to kind of dialogue with each other. So that's what you're in for tonight.
This piece has some C.S. Lewis imagery in it. It's called In Lieu of Narnia. Evening crowds in and rage blasts through our house, unhinging doors, belching lava in crescendos. Father and brother, twin volcanoes blown. Mother and I, seas recessed and reddened. There is nothing to do but wince as words erupt, lip to lip, singeing paint with cinders, echoes splitting street-side oaks and crashing neighbors' porch lights till they fall, submerged in the swamp-high shame of our yard. My father hobbles forward, a hydra of ego and despair, curses cracking like wind across a torn and flapping sail. My mother mists a vapor too thin to feel. On the smoldering staircase in Pittsburgh Steelers pajamas, maize polyester itching thighs, I hope my presence will make it stop, make it quiet, make it go away. But heat has me fumbling for the door. Swung wide, shut up, their voices like chainsaws rising through the flesh of my brain. There is no wardrobe in my sky blue room to walk through. No snow-licked lamppost or Mr. Tumnus. No lion to whisk me away. So I leave. Starboard edge of mattress, staring flatline, staring frozen through the wall, adrenaline and bone with a trampoline heart, prone in a Star Wars curtained courtroom, no language in my severed mind, no gavel or robe to help me object or douse these nightly infernos with truths I know they will remember when the lava cools and pride is forgotten. Had I stuck around to swallow the size of it, joined the voices rousing nails from wooden beds, singing sawdust into cracks where termites cannot go, I'd have broken like a top string tuned too far. Hardly a boy, a rent ember in a little house, in a little street, distended with justice undone, affection foregone, trying to soften in a time when volcanoes scorched the seas, and all the right words had turned to stone.
Scarlet Letter. In 5th grade, Father's secrets began breeding under my red confirmation dress, hid in the tunnel of my inner ear, clung to the sentry hairs on the nape of my neck, black inert bodies, glassy eyes, they squeezed beneath fingernails. Quiet as eggs, they spun the red thread of silence that cut me inside out.
Now we'll each do a brother poem. We got some crazy brothers. We love them. This is called The Blow. My brother never forgave my mother for letting Dad steer his 11-year-old fingertips across the surface of a Ouija board and tell their eager son he'd been a rapist and murderer in a past life. He slammed her sweet advances shut, her pleas gathering like motes in the shining beam of his anger. When I was 15, he loomed over her sagging figure in rose shadows of cheap curtains, beating her down with his mouth. Finally off my bed, I walked down the stairs and stood in the stunned air between perfume and violence. If you don't move, I'll hit you, he said. But it had taken me 10 years to reach that small patch of rug between them. He punched me in the jaw, and I knew his knuckles were kinder than the hands that fought demons behind the door my mother seemed so bent on opening. Permit and keys, I drove bridge to beach, the imprint on my cheek lit gold by sunset over Great South Bay. On the other side, I broke down. My car had stopped. The police officer looked surprised when a decade of tears spattered the hood of my hot, listless engine. It's okay, he said. We'll get you home.
The t-shirt. Eggshell white, worn almost all the way through. In the summer, you could see my 8-year-old brother's tan through the transparency of overwashing. There was a hole in the left armpit, and a smaller but more jagged one up at the neckline. The neck and arms were outlined in a blue material. That blue material seemed to be, at the end of the shirt's life, the only visible parameters the shirt had left. There was an iron-on in the center, long faded from overuse, but I think, if memory serves me, it said Dukes of Hazzard, with a picture of that famous car outlined in black. There were yellowish sweat stains under the armpit and a spaghetti sauce stain below and to the side of the faded iron-on, brown and nearly perfectly circular. Can't understand why this was my brother's favorite shirt. I only know that I too came to love this shirt. It was stability. It was the summer of '81. It was street lights and kickball and Carvel. It was walking band at the neighbor's dog to the 7-Eleven. Hey Terry, I got the football cards. I put them under my t-shirt. Get the grape soda. It was as if this shirt were my brother's tattoo, a sort of semi-conscious way to keep things status quo. And whatever they could do to us, the parents, they couldn't seem to keep Chris from wearing this shirt. Day in, day out, night in, night out, always. For years. I can't remember the day he got the shirt, maybe because all of our clothes were hand-me-downs brought to us by parental friends and large green garbage bags for us to sift through. It wasn't until the cotton gave way and softened, or until Chris had pulled it over his crouched-up knees 7,000 times, till it became special. It wasn't until the sweat stains, the spaghetti sauce sweetened the shirt somehow, made it lived in, that my brother began his campaign, the Cal Ripken of t-shirt use. My brother kept his streak up till it literally fell off his body in tatters. That's it. That's it. Give me the shirt. Give me the shirt. My mother took the shirt from Chris and put it under the kitchen sink with a dozen or so other rags. My mother did use the shirt-turned rag once. One night she sat, huddled in the corner of her bedroom, the digital clock flashing 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, like the garish neon light at the local topless bar my father sat at. She sat, pulling the cord of the night light on again, off again, on again, off again. Ah! In her lap sat my father's service revolver, cocked, loaded, and wrapped in my brother's favorite t-shirt.
This is called Feet. 4 sets of unlike feet. My mother's, splotched with varicose webs, are pale and sheer like tracing paper on a road map. And me, my feet are big. I mean, when I was 12, I could act my age and my shoe size. Jessie has jaguar feet, kind of sleek and sable, almost elegant, ready to pounce on you or steal off into silence. But my father's feet, like gnarled snakeskins, all stained and scaled with diabetes. Tough to look at as he sat smoking on the couch, smoking though he knew it'd kill him faster. Were sprinter's feet long before his nails yellowed and horned over in taloned apostrophes, before he tripped on a clipboard and had half his right one lopped off, before they were bandaged and slathered with betadine, before they became angry sacks of cracked dough, caning through the narrow chain link gap behind ShopRite to the last baseball game he'd see me play, where I captained the varsity team, alone, wrapping lonely doubles into alleyways, swiping lonely bases, diving for lonely line drives, shaking hands alone with opponents, the chink of the aluminum bat, the empty baselines, and my father's feet that looked like cracked dough.
Matt's reading about feet. I'm going to read about the shoe. My eyes on the tongue of my father's shoe, beat up Black patent leather, it faces me. Somewhere above me is my father, his other shoe tossed against the wall. I imagine it has left a black smudge. I'm not looking at the black smudge. I cannot look anywhere but at this worn-out shoe. Its sides reflect me. Its soul is pulling away from the body. Over me, father's weight presses with the ting, ting, ting of his loose and floppy belt buckle against his service revolver. He removes it deftly, like a serious student sharpening his pencil for an exam.
As you might have picked up, our fathers were complicated and difficult individuals, to put it lightly. My father died at 46 in 1989, and Terry's father died at 54 in 1994. So in some ways, we are grateful for that. And but you know, it's like they say, you write about something until you don't need to write about it anymore. So we have each a funeral poem. This is called Receiving Line. I'm so sorry. Your father changed my life. He loved you boys more than anything. An interminable string of rotten figs rolling toward my stiffened face, sealing me into fabric, lengthening pants, cinching necktie, the chandelier of my mind lowered and gone dark. A tall 15, poised on thick rose-patterned carpet. Steamed shirt and polished shoes, I stood so many miles from speech. The sun cannot be seen directly. Faces tilt at disparate angles of refracted light. They did not know the man whose tongue framed my house with iron while they flipped channels in tidy rooms. Each eulogy stilled the vowels stirring in my chest. Every laud a pail of dirt tossed down my throat, vines rooting at the base of hidden stakes. My father, neither monster nor saint, my secret, the hanger from which I learned to simply sway. How long I had waited. The crowd prayed and thumbed lint from blazer pockets. I stood, desperate to snip the root of him, the words inching from my mouth like a bud.
The funeral. You push me from the inside, you're clawing to get out. You're tearing my insides out with your big hands. Your big hands. That finger that was missing the tip from the war where you killed that girl and you raped the other one and you lost yourself. I remember that finger. That finger was how I could tell it was you in the casket. In the casket, you seemed to smile at me like an omen. I knew you'd come back. I knew you'd never leave me alone. Leave me alone. I dream about you while I sleep. I dream about you while I walk and work and think and fuck and act and create and just try to have a life without you. I wish I could live without you. I feel you kick at me, I'm losing you and I'm afraid. I want to break the cycle. I want to protect my unborn children from you before you push into me, hook your finger into me, pry me open. I'm so tight you pry me open. You crack me from my shell, blue as the sea. You find the hidden meat of me. Fish your tongue inside of me, suck the tender me from me. Suck me light, an empty shell on the beach, sun-warmed, hollow.
We each have a poem about Terry's mom, and from different perspectives, obviously. This is called Passing It On. You snapped her Polaroid by the red maple, your curbside daisy. Pigtails, white dress, thumbing bark as she posed, a conduit of light. You kept close watch on barbecue Sundays, pacing the perfect rectangle, grass prickling at your shoe tops. Paper plates, cold cuts, and sweets for Lenny's precinct pals. But day to day, thinking husband safe enough, you did not consider what he taught her on evening walks to Krauser's while you ran errands, or when his monstrous feet splintered floorboards at midnight. Your little girl, stretched by the maple, supine down the hall, hiding in the attic of her skull, like her mother, your bodies still with absence. Had you stood, stopped him. Your own secret might have risen, a dark weed poking through the concrete of night, and been used to make his crime your fault. Still a conduit of light, she forgives and blazes for you now. You reach like ivy, as if to curl under door frames, over mattresses, down New Brunswick sidewalks, to snap her back from the man you never wanted. Your hands are not as long as you'd like. Your sorry never big enough to put your shame to sleep.
Comfort food. Burgundy roses drift down walls and brown slants across the room, the tip of my pink high-heeled shoe, a sleeping dog at my feet. I'm sitting at the square kitchen table with my mother, stones in our mouths, the years between us, father spread out before us, that forbidden meal. The table is set, a spoon, a fork, a knife sharp enough to carve his initials into my arm. For you, my mother says, and reaches over to hand me a postcard, a recent trip she made through the hills of North Carolina. I imagine this car ride with her, the roadside stands buying thick blackberries and green cardboard containers, the kitschy danger of cheap motels and greasy truck stops filled with homemade cherry cobbler and mashed potatoes with gobs of butter, the gentle opening of conversation. We could put 1,000 miles between us and our history. I push back my chair from the table, the legs grate against the linoleum, a squawk from a falling bird. Her hesitant smile, wind chimes in the kitchen, recipes, weather reports, and the photographs. This is what we have.
But we'll end with one poem each about each other. This is something I wrote when we had first met, and we met on the internet, which is kind of bizarre, but had to have happened. And there's one Russian phrase at the end of this poem, which means because I love her, but I needed to write it in a different language. Getting the Cyrillic in the book was actually something that held it up for about a week. So it was, in retrospect, not a good idea. It's called This Week Had Arms. They flung open, feathers dipped from elbows pilling, carmine and curled. They hung, waiting to whip through horns of wind, cones of exhaust, ascending, dreaming of Charles Lindbergh in Parisian streets. My week's arms stretched, squeezed me from Milwaukee, from Washington Heights, through the internet. Booyah! I blushed. She said, P.S. I need you, want you, love you. The compost of her wisdom produced in me a blossom. Her voice whirls and climbs in my head, a carousel, accordion jangles till my eyelids close. My body spins against her hot, pink tongue, the cleansing slice of her throat, the speed of comfort in the dark, the howl of beauty in my hands, plucking asymptotes of elation from graph-papered air. My body doesn't spin, really. It rocks like a rope moored to shoreline, crashing undertow. And when she speaks, I am sucked to the sea. Hey, beautiful, on the tips of waves, the melodic glass of her aura stained orange and blue by the sky. In this ocean of growing infinities, I am found, bobbing at once in all hemispheres. There are no waters through which I am not permitted to swim. Потому что я ее люблю. They heave and cradle me in their arms. The wet bulk of the world buoys me up, balanced and safe.
I don't think I can top that, so. This is my best attempt at writing about the hardest thing to write about, which is love. In the waiting. My love is hungry, spilling mason jars, catching rainwater from rushing gutter pipes, black ink bleeding onto paper. I imagine our legs, vines reaching, toes slowly opening petals, or tonight could be the delicate blade pressed firmly against the satin slip with scalloped edges. How soft and open the landscape of possibility. The clock neglects me. the electric hum of telephone poles outside. I tap the egg on the waiting pan. Translucent cold runs through fingers. Every instant without your touch, the poverty in my hands. I sit in the pooling hours of waiting. Thank you.